bottle. I lived that life.
I thought I recognized that bottle.
Okay, are we ready to go?
Yeah, we're ready to go. Andy, you ready to record?
We're recording now. Be on your best
Okay, great.
behavior.
Okay, here come all the flubs and mistakes. I'm kidding. But first off, I just want to say how humbled I am to be here. To be honest with you, I'm a real fan of the club. I I feel very honored to be invited to speak because I mean, you obviously are pulling some amazing guests, and just to be able to spend an evening with you is really fun. So while we have a topic that may not seem fun from the get-go, I think there's a lot of positivity that can be gleaned from the subject of beer, San Diego beer in particular, in the COVID era. So let's just kind of get into it. And to do that, I'm going to go back in time to last March. I remember the day the music died. Um, I was coming home, my wife and I were coming back home to RB from Carlsbad. And I said, you know what? I go to breweries all the time for the purpose of interviewing people, for taking pictures, and doing what I need to do for the business of writing about beer. But I seldom, not or at least is not as much as I would like, get to go and just have fun at a brewery. I was like, you know what? I want to stop at a brewery on the way home. And she says, oh, okay, let's do it. So we stopped at the Lost Abbey, and there were some friends of mine there. We got to talking, trying some new beers, and just having a really great time, and reminding me of what I really love about the San Diego beer scene in the first place, and why I devoted my life to a career to writing about it. We left there, and I said, you know what? From now on, I'm going to make a point. I'm going to get out there way more often. Like starting this week, I made a plan with my friend who I bumped into there, and I said, yeah, let's go down to OB this week, and we'll hit up like OB Brewery, Pizza Port, some other places. And he says, great, call me tomorrow. We'll figure it out. All right. It didn't last more than like an hour before the announcement of the closure from the governor came. It's like, oh no. Oh no. Okay. Well, let's put that plan on the back burner. But I remember there was this instant panic that occurred for so many people, myself included, but not nearly to the extent of San Diego brewery owners who just had to be shaking in their boots, quite frankly. And I think that having talked to them a lot, that's exactly how they felt, and probably at that moment couldn't see any kind of recourse, anything they could do to affect the situation that was having such a giant effect on them. All of a sudden, the order to stay home, you have no customers on site. So I don't know how many people are familiar, but a I used to work in the brewing industry. The brewery's tasting room revenue, I mean, that's where you get your best margins on your beer. You want people to come there. It's great to sell six packs. It's great to sell packaged beer and draft account beer, but you make a ton of way more money on every pint that goes across your bar. Plus, it's the greatest place to market yourself and just have people know what you're all about. All of a sudden, none of that. Best margin sales out the window. Then the restaurants and bars who would take your kegs, they're closed or so slow that they can't even go through your beer. So lots of problems on that front too. Um, Lots of leftover beer to dispose of, a couple months in when, well, that beer's expired. It's out of code. What are we going to do with that? So I think that we saw one of the most impressive things, or the first impressive pivots from a lot of breweries when that happened. You saw people like change things over and start making hand sanitizer, getting their beer out to distilleries for special projects. And in some people's cases, before the beer was expired or out of code, or it was kind of nearing it, people were finding ways to get beers out to people on the front lines. That's three really clever things right there, right off the bat, and nothing that was making anybody any money either. It just really showed the camaraderie and the goodness that's in this industry, and also just the ingenuity that drives these people. Um, I have to say that after 7 years of working at breweries, I worked at Stone Alesmith and Society. I was never more happy not to work at a brewery than in 2020. And that's because, not because of the challenges where of just having COVID-19 and dealing with that on an everyday basis, but just the fact that they had to revamp kind of their entire ways of doing business. And we're talking about pickup. People come now and pick up beer. Well, it seems so simple, but there's really like there's back end things that have to be done. Delivery. There's so much to go. There's so much that goes into that, from driving to getting the crowlers, getting, if you can, mobile canning, getting mobile bottling, or whatever it might be. Maybe you don't have a crowler machine. That's a problem. And your entire website, you basically have to revamp that so that you can do this business of beer that for so long has been so simple. It's basically, I have a tasting room and I can have a high-tech website that's very interactive and great and always updated. But, for a lot of breweries, they can kind of skate too. If they can make fans, people will go and patronize that place. They don't really need to go check the website before they go. Like Battle Mage, for instance, I've never checked their website to see what they have on tap before I go there. I just know that I want to go there and they're going to have beers that I would like. So that's half the fun of it. But now it's, what is available? What can I purchase? What is the price? When can I get it? How can I get it? What days can you deliver to me? It had to be just a nightmare trying to do that, especially with less staff, because now all of a sudden, less revenue, less staff, less people working, but more work to do in certain senses. And you're really just constantly reallocating your resources. I mean, you have people who are in the tasting room now working to can beer or to do any one of the many things you can do within a brewery, within the cellar, within the warehouse, whatever it might be, maybe driving the beer to people. But people had to find, they had even more hats than you usually have in a brewery. Finding ways to keep your employees in decent situations where you're not holding them back by having too few hours. I mean, maybe you need to lay somebody off so they can get an employment, but you have to think about those things too. And this is at a time when, for an owner, they're thinking about, oh my gosh, could my business go out of business? Could I be bankrupt? All these things that are so bad. But one thing I really marveled at was just how much these owners thought about their staff. I can't think of too many breweries where that wasn't a chief concern. And you saw it across restaurant, hospitality, hotels, everywhere. But there's just this authenticity of breweries to me that I've been able to witness firsthand. Smaller staffs in general, where people do get to know each other really well and care about each other. So I was very impressed with how people were able to do that. After several months, on-site service is back. Well, sort of, kind of. So now it's time to get furniture. It's time to get canopies. It's time to figure out how we're going to do outside service, how we're going to space things out, how we're going to stay as in line with all of the things, the regulations that are in place to keep people healthy as possible and help to stop the spread while still having people around. Food requirement, that was a big one. Food requirement, that's really tough, especially when your orders, as you, I'm sure you all experience, or at least a lot of you, buying your beer with food, must be with food. I don't know. Everyone's got their kind of thoughts on it, and so do I. But that, just from your back end point of sale, that's a rough thing to deal with, because you're basically reprogramming that whole thing. You're dealing with an outside vendor who's now on site with you, but they're not your partner. It seems like a pain in the ass, and it really is. I guess is the way I can put it for that, is if you're at a brewery. But then there were some things that certain folks did that, as they got the hang of it, they found ways to kind of stand out, just as you have to in the craft beer industry. It's very tough to stand out on the shelf with hundreds of beers. I mean, we're talking literally hundreds of beers and so many options in San Diego. People found ways to make their products more attractive, to even make new beers in a time when you'd think that people would kind of like get back to something that made them feel really secure, that made them feel really safe, their core brands and things that people know them for, like flagship IPA or something like that. But you saw a lot of collaborations. And I mean, I'm challenged to think of a year where I saw more collaborations in San Diego County than in 2020. And it really drove sales and helped people to make beers in batches that worked for them, where they could sell through them based on the size of the batch as well as the demand for the batch, by creating that demand, sometimes on a weekly basis. I mean, and that's not easy either, but it really gets back also to the whole spirit of San Diego beer in the first place, where people are really in it together. And these folks were teaming together, and you often saw a lot of collaborations where, okay, I'll make a beer at yours, and the next thing you know, you're making it here. So it was a two-way street, and everybody kind of benefited from it. Another thing that if you had a beer club in 2020, it really came in handy. I mean, there's something where you get your money up front, and then you have this project that you can work on, and it can go on throughout an entire year and keep generate. Basically, you're fulfilling, but you have the money up front to do the things that you need to do, such as support your staff, uh, keep your business running as well as it can, pay some bills. And beer clubs were great. I mean, places like the Lost Abbey are a great example of that, going back to the last place that I got to go. So I should also note that I haven't been out of the house in over 365 days, because that was the last day I left to do anything that wasn't a doctor's appointment. So I'm looking forward to getting back out there. I'm going to make that thing happen. But then you saw people not just surviving through this thing, but thriving. And then when they did, I mean, it's so inconceivable. They gave back. And there were things like within the industry, In the Weeds was something that's set up to help all of the employees that were displaced or faced hardships. And so many people participated in it. And you have the folks from Five Suits, Beer for the ICU. That was a really cool program that they put out there. I mean, this is not the time for where it's convenient for people to be doing nice things like this. It's the right thing, but you saw many examples of it, and it's just, you have to, if I had a hat, I'd take it off. But it's great that our brewers, who have always been so supportive of charity efforts, continued to do whatever they could, even if it was small, and sometimes when it was big. And throughout this entire thing, just like with the rest of us, just as humankind, there was no roadmap for this. So I think if before COVID came along, you had asked people to speculate honestly about what they thought might happen, or maybe on that day when I said, the day the music died, what do you think is going to happen? I think people would have thought a lot more terrible things would have happened. A lot more breweries would have gone out of business. That maybe the breweries, they're typically companies that are set up by people as a passion project, something that, I didn't want to be in corporate America. I wanted to do this. This makes me happy. I'm going to start this. I'm going to do it. But, I don't have the business acumen of, say, like a CEO from a giant company, but that doesn't matter because I'm opening a craft brewery. It's about me. I'm going to do it my way. But do you think that somebody in that situation could weather something like a global pandemic for over a year? And I think a lot of people wouldn't have expected that necessarily. And that 2020 was all about the brewing industry flexing its muscles and its brains and showing what they can do. It's been nothing short of remarkable what's happened. I remember thinking that a lot of breweries would go out of business, and there were three or four early on that did. And those closures really had nothing to do with the pandemic. There was bad situations for those businesses where they were not in a good place anyway. And they said, okay, look, I think they were like, this is God trying to tell me something. We're hanging on by a thread. Let's just call it, because this isn't going to work out for us. Most of the things that you saw close were satellite tasting rooms. Sometimes it was somebody's like second or third satellite tasting room. Ocean Beach, on one block in Ocean Beach, Culture closed, not really a pandemic related closure. Two Roots closed there because things it was not the right place in time for them to have that. And they said, we're going to spend our money elsewhere because our lease is up. And there's really no reason to go and re-up it when people can't really spend a lot of time. We don't have outdoors. And then Belching Beaver, same thing. They said, our lease is up. We don't have an outdoor unit, and that's going to be really important. These three places have already been snatched up, and that Culture is now run by Novo Brazil. It's kind of like their outpost for their Nova Easy Kombucha line that they do, but they have the beers there as well. Place looks really great. California Wild Ales is converting the Two Roots tasting room into something for themselves, and so you don't have to go all the way to Sereno Valley. I think they'll kind of be in a community that's really matches their attitude, and doing things a little different and being a little fun and colorful. So I think that's going to be great. And then Rincon Reservation Road Brewery, which is a brewery up at Harrah's in Valley Center, they've taken over Belching Beavers, and it's a pretty cool little concept. I'll have an article coming out really soon, but pretty cool stuff. Like we're talking a Native American menu to go with the beers that they have using indigenous ingredients. It's going to be pretty cool.
Nice.
But I know that I spent, as a reporter, I kept thinking, okay, eventually I'm going to be writing a lot of articles about closures, bad things. I was prepared for it. I didn't want it, but I was prepared. And I think a lot of us, including people within the industry, spent it as every month went by, said, well, nothing closed. Things seem fairly okay for the situation. We kept expecting the other shoe to drop, but for the most part, it really didn't. And breweries found a way to hold on. I mean, to give you just a snapshot of where we're at right now, new satellite tasting rooms that are on the way in the near future. Booze Brothers, who we were just talking about, they're opening up in Fallbrook. Bergen in Little Italy opens April 17th. Chula Vista Brewery is working on a second place, a brew pub in Chula Vista. Makes sense. The aforementioned Lost Abbey, they're converting a church in the East Village into an indoor-outdoor spot that's going to be maybe one of their best, maybe their best satellite location yet. Ruler is opening in North Park in summer. Pete Sport's still working on their Imperial Beach brew pub. Pure Project is opening in North Park and their big giant headquarters they got from Iron Fist in Vista. And West Brew's opening in the East Village on May 15th. I mean, that's just things that are in progress and opening. That's a lot. And then there's new breweries that are working to come online right now. It's 1075 Brewing in San Marcos, Ataraxia Ale Works in Kearney Mesa, East Village Brewing, Itza Brewing in OB. Barrel and Stave is working with two other breweries to get the collab in Vista open. Michelini Brewing in Alpine. Ever heard of those guys?
Yeah.
One Season Brewing in Grantville has already opened. Paradise Hills Brewing, that's a kind of a collab with the home brewing company in North Park. Pivovar West, you'll hear more about that. The Tipping Pint Brewing in Carlsbad. I mean, I have a lot to keep track of, and maybe more than I have of significant projects at any one time since I've been writing about beer. And these aren't just kind of like Johnny come latelys who ran in here and said, okay, I can buy equipment cheap. I can get in on a lease cheap. These are people who are just moving forward with plans they already had. So I would say that the future for beer in San Diego appears to be really healthy, and we're going to actually have more than ever before, it looks like, by the end of this year, which is a wonderful thing. And that, I wouldn't come on here and talk about beer in the COVID age if it ended off bad, negative, and made us all want to go drink way more.
Well, that would be good for the breweries.
What's that?
That might be good for the breweries if we're drinking more.
Well, that you got a point. So I don't use Zoom a lot, but I see a hand up here for Greg. Does that mean there's like a question?
If you want to take a question from Greg, that would be great.
Sure.
Greg, you want to unmute yourself? Go ahead and ask the question. Greg, you need to.
We're going to run out of tape, Greg.
Let's see if I can unmute him.
I think you could just ask him to unmute.
He might have got tired of waiting for me and like gone to the bathroom.
So I just found the button. Sorry, I was actually trying to follow the chat and my fat finger, and I'm sure Jacques would appreciate it. My fat finger hit the wrong button. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. All right.
If you hit it again, your hand will go back down.
Swear to God.
Okay.
Okay. So, rather look more at the past, which has been just a remarkable chapter for SD Beer, if you ask me. The future to me is really exciting and just superbly interesting. Some of the questions that are kind of coming to my mind is like, how much of business as usual before the pandemic will we see after the pandemic? I mean, San Diego Beer, while the recipes, the beers, tons of innovation there. I will say that it was kind of like autopilot for a lot of breweries, where a lot of breweries were like the exact same model with a few exceptions. I wonder how many people will adjust their business models now and have clubs and have just a little more of a customer focused business model where it's really more about them, because I think having to adjust their model for the customers over a year has taught them all of the benefits that come from it. I mean, some people are so engaged with their local breweries and the places that they were supporting during the pandemic. You want to definitely foster that. Is that a real question, Steve?
Yeah.
Cool.
So do you foresee the breweries continue to do doing the same amount of online programming where geography doesn't matter for attendance? Or do you think when we all go back to being able to just like visit the brewery and do things locally, that those efforts will fall off?
I think it'll be like so many things with the brewing scene. It'll be different for everybody. It'll be kind of the value that they see in these things. I think that there's a lot because there's so much money to be made. Going back to how much you can make at your own tasting room plus ticketed events, you definitely see some fall off. But I think a brewery, if they're able, would be foolish not to engage more from a virtual standpoint and make things happen for people who can't get there, because there's tons of breweries personally I'd love to go to, but they're too far away. I mean, I can't pay like $100 in Uber fees to go and really enjoy that brewery all the way down in Chula Vista. But that doesn't mean I don't want to like order their beer and spend time engaging and being part of whatever culture they've set up, because the personalities of these breweries are compelling. We all know that. And the more you can do to get that out there, the better. Like I was saying about, in addition to the best margins, when the beer crosses the bar, you really get to know what a brewery is about when you're in their tasting room. And so any extension you can do to not require you to be right there physically, to have these interactions and meaningful, a meaningful interaction with somebody where they understand you and hopefully you understand them to some degree. I was a marketer in the brewing industry. That's the one thing I would love to give a shot, is just the whole new world of options that are open, even via something as simple as Zoom. Ryan.
Sorry, I commented in chat and people are asking me to elaborate. So I think some of that is dependent on when the ABC changes their language. Because like for us, we shifted our business model to be able to like ship beer because the ABC changed the laws almost overnight, and the drinking outside on the patio, that's a temporary catering license through the ABC, which they may revoke at any point as things change in June or July. Our landlord is allowing us that license based on the language the ABC currently has. So I think a lot of like the online platform, the deliveries, that kind of thing, it really depends on if the ABC continues to have the special permissions they allowed for COVID, but they have not given any language on if they or how long they're going to continue that, because a lot of breweries are saying like, yes, while we adapted, we did lose a lot of revenue in 2020. So like, let us recoup that in 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
But I haven't actually heard any like points from when they're going to do that. I have heard of a couple breweries that have been like lobbying to get the temporary catering license as a permanent thing. But I haven't heard of any successfully doing that yet.
Yeah, Brandon, the other thing is that I've particularly enjoyed the availability of cans and bottles from all kinds of different brewers. I mean, that's one thing that I have enjoyed from this. And obviously I think probably some of that will go away when all the restrictions are lifted. But I mean, we last month some of us were drinking bottles of Pliny the Younger too. I mean, which that never comes in bottles. You can never get that. And so what I think, so there are some things that are going to probably change and go back, but I'm kind of hoping that some of the things, per Ryan's comment there, that some of the things we realize, hey, maybe this is a good thing that we can keep some of the things that we were doing, because not everything was bad. Not everything was bad about what we had to do. Some of the things were, it turned out to be good things for consumers, good things for beer aficionados.
I'm really hoping they let us keep some of it, because we went for so many years of just like living in fear of like, if this beer steps outside, like that's a $10,000 fine, like everyone's in trouble. And then the next day it's like, oh no, you can totally like take that to go and like you can go drink that in the parking lot. And it's like, Oh, well, now that we've all adapted to that for a year, it'll be really interesting to see what carries over and what reverts back.
By the
And
way,
especially
Ryan,
like in what type
by
of
the way,
time
Ryan,
frame.
your beer garden is amazing. I love that. That
Oh, the
little
battlements,
garden
thank
got
you.
out there. That is really cool. I hope you're able to keep that that going. Like you said, it's, you know, it's sort of detached from your building. So I don't know if that's an issue or anything like that.
We had to sign an agreement with our landlord that once the ABC changes the language, they are going to take that away from us. But as long as the ABC doesn't change the language, then we can hopefully keep it for a while, is the plan.
I forget the name you had on it, but it was a really in-theme name. Can you remind us of what the name was?
It's called the Battlements.
Yeah, the battlements. That's right. The battlements.
Yeah.
You go out there to the battlements, and there are the benches out there that you can drink out there. And, you know, when I went out and visited, there were quite a few people that were, you know, enjoying the outdoors and having a Battle Mage beer out there.
Yeah, we're definitely hoping to continue to have the outdoors for as long as they'll let us, and reopening indoors because it'll help us just kind of get back to normal a little bit. Because while we did like adapt the business model a lot, I think, you know, a lot of breweries survived, but they also definitely took a hit in sales in 2020. But you know, you adapt and you survive and things get better.
Nothing like singing the verses of victory in the battlements.
All right, so I'll mute myself and let you get back to it, Brandon.
Oh, no worries. You were actually what you mentioned was actually the next question I had. Is like how many genies can be put back in the bottle as far as regulations and things like that, because people will lobby for things, and consumers will want it as well. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. How will owners insulate their business, or will they, from future pandemics? There could be another pandemic anytime. So this is something that maybe we have to consider for the future. Kitchen and outdoor space, will that be a bigger consideration as well moving forward as people open places? Packaging resources, will breweries, you know, invest in nano canners and things that allow them to play on that stage? Can breweries influence the government to keep relaxed the regulations down so that they can do the things that we enjoyed as consumers? Who'll take advantage of the closures? I don't think it's going to be a really huge deal here in San Diego, since there aren't so many, but there's other parts of the country where surely more breweries went out of business. And one thing we see in history is that whenever there's some kind of epic phenomenon that leads to a bunch of closures, usually people with a lot of money can come in and do things, whether it be just buying up equipment, opening their own interest, or maybe this is really a good time for somebody who's been wanting to get into the brewing industry for a long time to do so because the conditions are right for them now. So it could be something terrible or something great. Time will tell, but you know, I do know one place where you could keep up on everything that's happening in San Diego County as far as beer goes, San Diego Beer.news. I'm just saying. But so getting to San Diego Beer.news, I actually have a pivot story as well from the pandemic. So a little bit about my background. I started out as a food writer after I'd been on Food Network a couple of times. Started writing for papers in 2007. Then started doing freelance for magazines, national outlets, all sorts. I was actually very surprised at how much happened. At one point, I was contributing to a dozen national and local magazines, newspapers at one time. And had a regular job too. So it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. From the beginning, I wrote about local beer a little bit, but you know, most of my writing was about restaurants. And over time, I realized nobody else was really writing about beer. And so I kept pushing it and pushing it because I started drinking local craft beer in the late 90s and always enjoyed it. But there was hardly anybody I could talk to about it because a lot of people didn't know about it. So I found that I extracted a lot of pleasure from exposing people to it. And after a while, it just became such a passion for me that I decided, you know, I'm just going to put everything else on the back burner as far as what I write about. And I want to make my writing beer focused. And I'll tell you, it's not as sexy to do that. I mean, there's not as many great dinners at restaurants. There's not a lot of trips and boondoggles and hotel stays and fun stuff like that. But honestly, what I get out of the beer is worth it so much more. So I started doing near daily reporting on the beer back in 2011. So did it for San Diego Reader, San Diego Magazine, and then West Coaster, which I started in 2015. So I was there for 5 years as senior editor, and that was almost daily reporting too. So going back to the pandemic and the announcement that day when everybody was kind of freaking out, I was too, because it wasn't 5 minutes after the press conference with the governor that my executive editor over at West Coaster said, okay, well, we're putting a freeze on everything. All of our advertisers now are basically in a bind, so we can't use you. I said, oh, well, and I did. So I completely understand. So let's just see how they're like, let's just see how this goes, and we'll bring you back as soon as we can. I said, well, that's fantastic. I really appreciate it. So 3 months go by. I didn't do a whole lot. I wrote a novel. That was fun. I hiked a lot. That was great. But I was really jonesing to go back to writing about beer. I will admit in the beginning, there wasn't a whole ton to write about. And I did a little freelancing for other outlets. So I know that for a fact. But I was kind of over it after 3 months. And unfortunately, I found out that West Coaster was pretty much on its way to folding and weren't going to be able to bring me back. So when I retired from the brewing industry, that was late 2019, I knew that if I did that, and I really put all of my career into writing, that I was going to have a backup plan in case any of these magazines went out of business. So I had written down what I would do if that happened. So I pulled this plan out, and it was a contingency plan to start my own outlet and make it a website, because really people are digesting their news online. I don't know if you've noticed, maybe you've seen Facebook, but that's where people are mostly getting their news, and newspapers and magazines are really struggling to just be in operation at all. So I had a former Stone coworker from Stone Brewing. He used to do all of the great websites that they had and all the web promotions and a lot of social media assets. He started his own company called Paradigm, which has its own software for building websites. And like, hey man, it's what I'm thinking of doing. He's like, that'd be awesome. Let's do it. It was just that simple. And within 2 months, we had a website. We just like really hunkered down and did it. At first, I was writing articles and putting them on Facebook. This is as pivoty as it gets for a writer. Writing's pretty simple. You write, people see it. But instead of going to an outlet, I was gaining more of the following and people's engagement on a daily basis, or near daily basis anyway, via Facebook and Instagram. And that positioned me really well for when we launched the website. And almost immediately, San Diego Beer.news became just a really big hit. We garner a lot of attention on a daily basis, like I'm saying, and it's really fantastic because it's for people like me. And at the end of the day, I love that I'm kind of like talking about my hometown, talking about the thing about my hometown I like the most, to people who kind of feel the same way. So for those who aren't familiar with what San Diego Beer News is, you can check it out, San Diego Beer.news. But again, daily reporting, local beer scene, industry. We cover things like openings, the rare closings, expansions, what people are up to, new beers. Like we show a list of anywhere from like 50 to over 100 beers that are tapping at any given week. Every Thursday, it's called What's Tapping. Makes a lot of sense. Have beer of the week. We have columnists that are on staff that are really great. A food and beer columnist, Tyson Blake from O'Brien's Pub and West Coast Smoke and Tap House. Just makes awesome food. So he's great at that. Beer education. We have Chris Leguzman, the education director over at Pure Project Brewing, and also an advanced Cicerone. Beer historian is Shannon from Burning Beard. A lot of people know her. This boisterous, great character with a tremendous writing voice. If you do nothing else, go check out the way she writes an article. It's a great article on Vienna Lager, the history of Vienna Lager that she put up. Really cool. Ian Cheeseman, for those of you maybe don't know him, he's a hilarious dude who likes running up to 78 and like drinking a lot and just being funny about beer. Colby Chandler from Ballast Point, he's been there over 20 years. And so he kind of gives us a bunch of different content, but really it's about being in the community of the brewers and the people who work at breweries. So pretty cool there. Speaking of those people, we have a Voice of San Diego Beer guest article series where I provide the platform for them to just get out there and write a guest essay or article about things that mean something to them. During the pandemic, Jeff and Dandy Bagby wrote something about how they were struggling with decisions they have to make as far as following regulations or not. And it's just one example, but there's a lot of things about charities and good stuff like that too. And they just kind of pop up every now and then, but they're really compelling. We also have partners, different podcasts like 91X Beer for Breakfast, the one that I'm on, Indie Beer Show, Beer Night in San Diego's on there too. But yeah, so if you love beer, please check it out. But one thing I would ask you to do, we have a free email newsletter. Sign up for that, because every Friday I'll kind of catch you up on what you might not have had time to see the whole week. But I mean, there's a plethora of things there that are really interesting for people who love beer. So I tell you about that, but there's one thing I haven't told anybody about that we're going to be doing. And this is really something I'm excited to tell you guys about, because I know that being a home brewer, it's really great to think that, you know, like a pro brewer or a commercial brewery might someday take your recipe and brew it. Well, that homebrew summer, this SD homebrew summer, that's what it's about. Okay, so I'm going to try to figure out how to share my screen. Let's see what we can do. See what we can do. Do I have to do anything?
You need to share your screen.
I think I am. Hold on one second. Okay. Is it working?
Yes.
Holy crap. I did something right. All right. So who here is into homebrewing? So SD Homebrew Summer. We teamed up with Ballast Point because, as you know, they have Homebrew Mart as well. And it just seemed like the perfect folks to get on board with this. And they're like super duper excited about it. And I'll tell you that there's a lot of breweries involved with this, and they were all really, really happy. And I didn't have to do any convincing. They were stoked when they knew the homebrew community in town was going to be benefiting from this. So we have several phases of this. The first phase is pro brewers writing scaled down homebrew recipes for some of the beers that they make. And we're talking like really great IPAs and all sorts of other styles, but beers you've heard of, beers that you're like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool they're sharing that. So we're going to share one every week from a different brewery, as well as one every week from Ballast Point, like taking from their archives from the homebrew mart back when they used to brew all these beers that now are no longer available. So we'll have a recipe from all of these breweries right here. AleSmith IPA is one of them. Something really cool from Society that I'm excited about that I just found out about. But the other part that's cool, and I hope you guys will participate, is we have breweries lined up to brew batches of homebrewers recipes that they would like to brew. So these are the breweries. Maybe you've heard of Battle Mage, and maybe you've heard of Five Suits, but yeah, a lot of cool folks up there, and they're just ready to go. So we're going to try to make it as close to a weekly deal as possible, but you know, I think that'll be June, July, August as it's taking place. So maybe we'll be able to actually like go to these places and have these beers together and enjoy them, and just like really support the home brewers who get in there. But it's a really simple thing. You can send as many homebrew recipes as you want for consideration. Just send it to info@sandiegobeer.news by April 20th. And on April 21st, I'm going to subcategorize them into style categories, make it a little easier on the brewery, so they'll kind of know like kind of what they're looking for, is what they're interested in brewing. And then they can go through them and see which one kind of speaks to them. As breweries pick them, we'll take them off the table basically, and contact people via email and let them know that their recipe got picked up by such and such brewery. But very straightforward, very simple, but hopefully a lot of fun as well. We all know that home brewing is the bedrock of, you know, this great craft beer community we have in San Diego. Without that, we wouldn't have what we have as far as the pro breweries. So wanted to celebrate that. So I say good luck. Please take part. I would love to see a lot of Society of Barley Engineers beers in there. Going back to my website, these are little things, social media if you want to follow, if you don't already. Yeah, it's just been great hanging out with you guys today, and I saved a lot of time for questions. So
well, first of all, thank you for sharing Homebrew Summer with us, and it really is an exclusive. It's an exclusive until tomorrow morning.
Yeah, tomorrow
because it's not just the Society of Barley Engineers that are going to be involved, but really appreciate you saving an extra special announcement for us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like Quaff doesn't get this till tomorrow. Yeah, we're putting an article up tomorrow, but I was like, oh, we could tell them a day ahead. That'd be really cool. But it's going to be open to anybody. You know, club affiliations aren't necessary, and the the recipe does not have to have won an award. It doesn't have to be any certain kind of style. I really just wanted to be simple. Like if there's a beer you're proud of that you'd love to see out there, throw it in the mix. You know, the worst thing that can happen is somebody passes it up, but you know it's good.
I love it. I think that's great. That's thanks for thinking about homebrewers. Thanks for thinking about all the craft brewers, especially during this difficult period of time for us in San Diego.
My pleasure. I've actually wanted to get some more homebrew content on for a long time, and this is finally able to get to a place where I could. I'm like, the summer's perfect. People actually get together, maybe get in the garage, do what they need to do, and just have a fun time doing it again. So more interaction is a great thing.
Well, let us know what we can do to support your efforts.
Spread the word's great. I'll take that. That'd be cool. Like let people know about the homebrew summer or the website itself, anything. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Become a San Diego Beer News patron. Maybe.
Oh yeah. I'm the worst salesman on the planet. I'm not really good at that part, but I really do like writing about beer. So that's good. And I'm looking forward to when these beers do drop. It's going to be super fun because I will be vaccinated. I already got my first shot, and I'm looking forward to getting out there and like going to the release events for these beers. I have an ulterior motive in that I love drinking beer and I like having fun with cool people. So yeah, I'm trying to make 12 fun days for myself in 2021.
Why don't you plan on coming to the beer camp up in Vail Lake?
Is that spelled VAIL or VALE?
VAIL.
You can spell it however you want. We won't judge you.
Just not when I put it in. Just not when I put it in the Google Maps. I better get it right.
There's no chance of ending up at the wrong place heading across that highway. You'll get the right place.
Well, I'm gonna have to fix that slide, but I won't need it for next month, so that's cool.
Oh right.
If there's a lot of beer, you're in the right place.
Yeah, I'm sure I can smell like the Citra from a mile away. It's like, Centennial. Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Hernandez from the group?
Well, thanks again for having me on. I mean, it really is. It's a pleasure being here. And thanks a lot. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you for coming out.
My pleasure.
So I'm going to have a little toast to Mr. Hernandez.
Oh, boy.
So fill your glass. Got mine. Again, thank you very much, and all the best in your ventures and in San Diego Beer News and the Homebrew Summer. What an awesome idea. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.